Hello and welcome to the Promised Land, a show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min Podcast Network. Apologies, everyone. We're a day later than we said that we would be. Busy stuff happening, Rob. Although Rob is sporting some new Stone Roses ex Man United collection on the
I
podcast today,
am.
if you're watching it.
I'm modelling it today. Yes, here it is. And I like to think, Scott, that as we wore this capsule for the last game, that it brought us luck, old school 90s luck, because that's what Man United relied on a little bit and got a fantastic, famous victory there at Villa Park. So no, I quite like it. I think it's quite a nice shirt, and United have done some bad shirts over the years, so it's nice to see a good one.
Not sure how it works for my color blindness, because green and red are the ones I confuse.
It is busy, isn't it? It is a
Yeah,
busy. Obviously, it's
I
the
like
album
it though.
cover.
It's very,
I'm
very,
sure
very
I've
good.
got I don't know, I've got the album in here somewhere. This is all alphabetical, by the way, because I'm very anal about it. So the Stone Roses cover is in there and the S's. So yeah, it's a classic cover, isn't it? And if you're a little bit older, then this kind of print design means something to you. So it was nice to see it on a Man United kit.
Yeah, today we'll talk a little bit about what happened Sunday afternoon. Man United taking a big win at Aston Villa. It was a big win. Obviously, they rode their luck at times, but Scott McTominay, world's greatest. How do we? What do we think he is, Rob? Is he? Can we call him match winner? He's won more points for United this season than Mo Salah has for Liverpool, Erling Haaland has for Man City, and Son has for Tottenham. 12 points, I believe, his goals have brought United.
I was just about to say the pressing statistic out of that is that he has gained Man United 12 points on his own this year, which if you think about it, if you take 12 points off what United have now, I'm not convinced the manager has a job. Like that is it. Like 12 points is a lot of points, isn't it? So what is Scott McTominay? I don't know. Maybe we can have that discussion today because I don't think Scott McTominay is your answer to anything. But there is this reason why, with 60 or 70 minutes on a clock, that Eric Ten Hag goes to him, because Eric Ten Hag looks at him and says, right, you're one of those people that will be in the box and might get me the goal I need if we're kind of running out of ideas. And I think at Villa Park, it did feel a little bit like that, Scott. I think at that moment you bring him on, it was a little bit like, well, Scott, he's not going to help you keep the ball, but he might score you a goal. And of course, that goal was very Scott McTominay, wasn't it? Swung in the box, gets up there, heads it down into the back of the net, 3 points. Sometimes it's very simplistic football, isn't it? It's like score a goal and that's your solution. But I think overall as well, that cannot be your go-to, I think, for the rest of the season if you're trying to look after a football or try and dominate some parts of possession. Because I think that was the big takeaway for me, Scott, with the game, is that United gave away a lot in that game but got away with it. 2-1 was a good result, I think, off the back of how the game kind of panned out.
This is Villa, though. I mean, they've beaten City, they've beaten Arsenal. It's not many people expected United to go there and win. Although maybe I thought that I kind of had a sneaking suspicion that they might end up doing it. But obviously, that win brought United to within 5 points of Aston Villa, who were fifth. Boubacar Kamara did his ACL in that game. Very, very important player to Aston Villa. And United have won 3 in a row in the Premier League. What a run. They've got 0 goal difference.
9 out of
Finally,
9, 9 points out of
24
9.
matches. After 24 matches, they finally have 0 goal difference. Can they get into positive territory? We will see. But I think for me, the other day, obviously, you want to see United go and play Villa off the park, but probably Ten Hag is in the position of thinking, I need points. We need to win. We need to catch up. And obviously, Tottenham took a win in injury time against, who did they play? I've forgotten. Completely forgotten. Brighton.
Brighton, it was Brighton.
Scored against
your
Brighton.
favourite team, Brighton.
Yes, my favourite team, Brighton. And now United are 5 points ahead of 7th and 5 points off 5th. So they could go one of two ways, but they have Luton coming up, and I think they play Fulham or Everton or somebody in the next week or so before a trip to Manchester City. So if you think, take 2 more wins, keep the heat on, keep the pressure on, they're back in the mix for top 4 or 5. I think we've when you think about this, it's a weird thing to suggest that you would like Liverpool to go far in the Europa League and Man City to go far, or Arsenal to go far in the Champions League, and even Villa to go far in the Conference League, because it will probably mean that 5th place is secured as a Champions League spot for next season. So United are in that territory, but they are in that conversation. It seemed like they were miles and miles away from it just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, you're in the conversation, but I'm going to stick to my guns on it with the league. Is that looking at the table, I still think when you look at our performances and you look at like maybe the wider aspects of the football, is it's so delicate, Scott, that you kind of like you could fall off a cliff so easily. Like yesterday, Chelsea go and win their game, don't they, against Crystal Palace, and the whole of the spiel afterwards was, "Oh, are Chelsea finding themselves under Pochettino?" And I'm thinking,
They were awful yesterday.
wasn't it a week? Well, wasn't it a week ago? The whole world was doing content about how bad Chelsea are. It's like that was a week ago. It wasn't a week. It wasn't like a month ago or 2 months ago. And I think the same counts for Man United. I'm happy with the fact that we got the win because I think that showed character. And when Scotty scores the goal, I don't know about you. You know, we talked about this about how we celebrate all of us individually, like in those moments. I didn't celebrate that goal at all. I just sat there like almost a bit numb because I was thinking, we're not going to get anything out of this game because we were getting turned over at that point. And obviously, as you get a counter attack, a little bit of brilliant dancing from Cobby in the corner, gets the ball to Delo, brilliant cross from Delo, and a great header. But I just kind of sat there because I was like, God. The difference is, Scott, I think a few weeks ago, that goal just doesn't come. Man United are starting to score goals again, and that helps, doesn't it? Is that if you can actually put the ball in the net. You just mentioned the goal difference there. Kind of embarrassing that we're on 0, but that's where we are. That's where we've been this season. And you've got to just try and approach each game now. More worried about going to Luton Town I am than I was about Villa Park. Because I think United showed in the last game against Aston Villa that they can get at Villa, and obviously they did that again. Luton actually are on a good run of form, even though they're still losing games. I've watched them, and they're playing some decent football. So it'll be a little bit concerned about a trip to Kenilworth Road, but you're winning more games now. Like you just said there, winning 3 on the spin is really the tonic here, isn't it? Is that even if you've got problems still, just win football matches because that's all that matters. At the end of the season, if you come 4th or 5th and you get Champions League, then we can kind of forgive a lot of the stuff that we've seen.
Yeah, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and watch us on YouTube as well. The Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow us on social media at @Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and at TPL MUFC. Also join our Man United WhatsApp channel through 90 Min. There might be some clips from this show going on there. If you haven't already, the link should be in the description of this show. Yeah, we'll talk about Villa today. We'll also talk a little bit about the bigger picture. I mentioned to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who, according to an SEC filing, has substantially more. What's the quote? Let me see. What's the quote? Significantly in excess. His net worth is significantly in excess of $4 billion. According to an SEC filing, as we just wait for everything to be ratified. We're not too far away from it now, but yes, interesting development. Where do you want to go from here, Rob? Do you want to particularly highlight anybody from the weekend?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I think again, when you've won a game, and especially in the way that you won it with a big kind of hoo-ha at the end of a match, then things get forgotten quite quickly. Like we're now 2 games past the actual game, isn't it? And emotions quell. I do think that in the football match, that after the first 20 minutes, you went into typical Man United dysfunction mode. Like I don't think the performance was particularly good for the majority of the game. I think Casemiro got targeted, but I think he sorted it out in the second half and actually did his job and helped the defense as he did. I think Varane was the same. But it's just worrying, isn't it, that you lose Luke Shaw in the match, obviously, and at halftime, and your choice is Victor Lindelof in a 4-1-4-1, and it did not work at all. You got targeted all over the pitch. So I think Villa will feel pretty aggrieved, Scott. They didn't get anything out of that game because they dominated those phases quite, I think, conclusively in the second half. But of course, the question is, what can Erik ten Hag do? I think his hands are tied behind his back with his personnel, and if he wants to play his system. But I think the thing I've put on the table and will say repeatedly is that maybe you have to tweak your system, and that's a hard thing to say, but I think that's just where we are with it, and it's up to him, isn't it? Because I think if we go forward now for 2, 3, 4 weeks without Luke Shaw, then if Lindelof's your left back, then I don't feel great about that. Malacia's not far away, is he? Is it? He must be closer now.
He's closer than he's ever been, obviously, but
Yeah.
if you're coming off an injury that you've been out with for 6 months, then surely you're still a matter of weeks away.
That's the problem, isn't it? It's getting people up to speed and not repeating injuries and stuff like that. Obviously, we've just seen we've lost Lissandro, and now Luke Shaw's suffering with these things. So I think again that's something to look forward to in the future. Transferring to Scott about buying players that maybe have better fitness records, and
I think that's a must, really.
That's a takeaway here, and it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it really it's strategic. Like, you do have to look at players' histories and really go with it. Of course, player can get injured at any time. It's what it is. I think with Luke Shaw coming back at left back, what you just see, Scott, is that already in the last few weeks, Marcus Rashford's so much better. That's because he's got a left back that can overlap, open the pitch up for him, and do more technical things. So if you lose him and it's Victor Lindelof, guess what? Luton Town is not going to be fun. It isn't. So you're going to have to find a way to negate what Luton can do. Because Luton, I think, have got good attacking options and have done well in their kind of their own expectations. But of course, they're not winning games. But Man United come to town, Scott. Oh, it's a party, isn't it? They would love to beat Man United. So United are going to have to be defensively better at Luton and maybe just play more swift counter-attack football.
When you say change the system, then we had a chat off this about this before we started recording. What do you mean?
So he is eternally obsessed with 4-1-4-1 and all its variations. So 4-1-4-1, 4-2-3-1, all just variations of 4-3-3. Yeah, tactically. So if you want to play 4-3-3 and those systems, cool, brilliant. But what we've seen at Man United, I think, over a long time, even going back to Solskjaer, was that Solskjaer wanted to play 4-3-3, but couldn't play it overtly. So he played a double pivot because all he could think is that McFred needs to look after these areas. And that was because of the wider personnel in the team, the 11. I think when you look at Eric Ten Hag, he's caught between a rock and a hard place, because as soon as he loses Alessandro Martinez, who's his ball progressing centre back, as soon as you lose your left back who overlaps in Luke Shaw, the whole system becomes null and void. The system just fragments. What do I mean? Well, it means that people can just run at Casemiro with no one around him and just find the space. That's not because Casemiro is X, Y, or Z. That's the system. That's because Casemiro can't do that function. He's not going to be able to run with people. So what I say is, when you look at left back, if your choice is Victor Lindelof, then really you probably be playing a system that's more narrow and bringing Lindelof into the channel as opposed to being wide on the left. And what we saw against Villa was that when he got the ball wide on that left hand side, he didn't have an out ball at all, did he? It was either back to the goalkeeper, inside, or kind of kicking it out of play over there. The manager, sometimes you have to compromise how you're coaching and say, right, do you know what? I can't do that here because we'll actually concede a goal. And I think that's just where he is. And if we go to Luton and we lose because of the system, it will have to highlight the system. We can't just say, oh, it's because of Casemiro being slow, or it's because Victor Lindelof is a rubbish left back. So these are the choices.
You're saying you're saying change system to what?
I still think plenty of teams will do it. They'll change to something that's more narrow with the 3 at the back and 5 in midfield, and you can do that to shore up, and you can play more counter-attack. I think one of the things for Man United is that we are seeing now in the last few weeks that the front 3 are really popping. So it feels like everything is kind of around that. It's about how do you get the front 3 scoring you goals. Now they're doing that. So it's hard because you don't want to change the system to affect that. You don't want to go, say, 2 at the top. Would it be Rashford coming more inwards? We've always said, haven't we, Rashford and Garnacho better in the wider areas. Now Højlund's definitely, his performances have really gone up, I think, at centre forward. But this is the manager either has to protect or attack. And I think that sometimes that balance isn't there because of the personnel. That means you have to tweak the system. I would go 4-2-3-1 as a natural thing to play a double pivot to protect, especially if you've got fullbacks you can't trust. So that's up to the manager. Like, he hasn't played a lot of 4-2-3-1 this year, Scott, whereas last year he played a lot of it. This year he's literally not gone to it at all, because he's played something more expansive, which I understand. I think Cobby gives you that option because he can play the 8. I think Bruno can play the 8 to an extent, but I think you're kind of leaving Casemiro on an island, really. And I think if you go to Luton Town, Luton will look at that and go, well, if you want to play 4-1-4-1, we're just going to look at your single pivot. We look at the wider areas. We're going to attack those areas systematically. And if you're not going to change your system for it, great, carry on. We'll try and beat you that way. If you can make it work, Scott, great. Like Lindelof comes at left back and it all works. Yay!
But you'll still have Lindelof at left back in a 4-2-3-1.
You still exactly, but I think it's safer to be able to cover that position with a double pivot. So that's a system change. You'd be able to go to 2 there and look after Casemiro and Victor Lindelof. The issue is as well is that when you lose a Shaw and when you lose a Martinez, is that it's kind of taking out what they do individually. Like they do great stuff in the system, but individually they can bring you out from the back on their own. They're talented enough. I think you saw Lindelof against Villa. One of the fears was that when the ball was at his feet, he was trying to go up the line to help Rashford, and obviously Rashford then obviously went off. But you could see that the whole balance was gone out of the team, and you basically rolled the dice for the second half, and you won the game. But it was a roll of the dice. It wasn't anything tactically brilliant. I know managers like to stick with their systems, but we saw it with Jurgen Klopp last year, and he's done it previously with Liverpool, is that he's gone from his 4-3-3 to a more reductive 4-2-3-1 to look after spaces. They're tactical choices, Scott. That's all it is at the end of the day. And I think that's what the manager will have to decide here is, do you go to Luton and just try and win 3-0 and stick with your system and go full forwards towards your centre forward? Or are you going to try and stop the opponent at times? Mate, it's going to be a bit of both. Systems can also change in-game, Scott. Like, they don't have to be 4-1-4-1 for 90 minutes. You can do different things and flip your system, but I'm not quite sure Ten Hag feels he has those choices systematically, which is sad because I think you've got to develop those things over a long period of time. It's not a slant at the manager. It's not a slant at the manager. It really is not criticism of him. These are the choices he has to make. And if you lose at Luton, those things will be on the table. That's all it is. We will have to talk about them because they're valid. And yeah,
I think you're telling him to change system in game, but he does though. Like when you put McTominay off the striker.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, I think there were elements in that game where, yeah, obviously Casemiro got run, but I feel like he did tweak it.
Yeah, he did.
And it worked. And you're asking him to change the system from...
No, I'm asking him to do that more. Tweak systems more. Like, this is it. I think quite often throughout this campaign, he has stuck to his guns and we've been punished. And that's why I've criticised that. But you're right. I think in off ball, we went 4-4-2 at times in the game against Villa. And it worked because it keeps McTominay in a part of the pitch where he's less of a problem. And that is that you want him in the box anyway, don't you? And that ball comes in, he's almost like a centre forward. So really the question should be, do you go to a 4-4-2? Do you do something like that and really dig your heels in and go, right, we sit with the system because it actually works to look after the space a little bit more? I think the problem is that when you're asking Scott McTominay to be a jack of all trades in midfield, which has happened a lot this season because of your injuries and one thing or another, is that you get punished. And that's it. So, like, I don't think it was genius to bring on Scott McTominay in the second half, but this is what the manager goes to because at least Scotty gives him goals. And as you said, 12 points this season is proof in the pudding, isn't it? It's to show that he's earned his place, I think, through those points. But if that's your default going forward next season or whatever like that, and obviously all we're saying is that probably isn't a very clever way of doing it.
But he's limited in a sense. And like, I know that I'm the guy that defends Ten Hag all the time. Because I feel like there's so much granted, like fair criticism of him. He's using tools which are not fit for a system. And when you talk about, look at that back three, they have one ball playing centre back in the entire squad. One.
Yeah.
And he's injured. He's been injured for the last year, essentially. And then your backup left back has been injured all season. Your first choice left back has been injured on and off for most of the season. And then you end up with playing Rafa Varane, who's slowing down, past his best. I know Harry Maguire is getting some praise. He got player of the match for his aerial prowess the other day. But we know that he tried to shop him last summer. And Victor Lindelof, I don't think is going to be part of this long term either, if they can sell him. It's just he hasn't been able to give the squad a facelift. And throw McTominay into that as well. They tried to sell him last season, but he's limited by the fact that United can't shift these players on, so he has to make do with the qualities that they do have. and that then, or their limitations, then show up in the ability that he has to play a system he wants to play. So I think for me, as long as we see elements or like parts of flashes, maybe flashes of like football that I think he wants to play, and I think we have seen that at times this season, just not very regularly. As long as the results come with it, I think he's owed another year. Personally, I do. Obviously, if he comes seventh, then I think that's it's going to be a no go. But if he qualifies for the Champions League and you see flashes of what he wants to do, for me that's enough. Maybe not for everyone, but for me that's enough.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's owed. I'd like it earned. So, like, I think the thing is that I think it's right and proper and salient to say that everything you just said there is totally factual in the sense that he's not had choices, is he? Like, the squad's not good enough, and that's hurt him to be able to do the things he wants to do. I still think that ultimately you will get judged on results or how those games petered and panned out. Now, I do think the good thing is, Scott, and this is a positive, is that he has figured things out in games. So, like, he did figure it out against Villa. Like, that was his choice. He brought Scott on. We might not like Scotty on the deck or some of the things that Scotty does expansively, but you set up, you tweak your system to go something like 4-4-2 off ball, and that gives you the chance to then push him into the box and you score the goal and you win the game. That is literally the whole philosophy and ethos of sport, is that your choices impact results both positively and negatively. And I think with Eric, he's had so many things to contend with since he's been at Man United. Like, go back to day one, from Ronaldo all the way through. Like, there's been so many things with the playing squad. And he's at a place now where I think hopefully players are coming back, but you're still seeing that as soon as you lose 1, 2, or 3, that you're in a bit of a dodgy predicament. So I think that if things go okay and you get Champions League, then yeah, you give him another year. Like, what's the point? You haven't really got much lined up behind the scenes.
There's not another manager choice out there that is screaming.
Not screaming, no. I think we also have to give value to the fact that Ineos have been operating in football for a while now behind the scenes, and even though they've only been at Man United 5 minutes, is that they will have their own ideas about coaching, sporting direction, and those kind of things. So they will have coaches in their mind that maybe we've not even talked about, not necessarily the biggest names, and they might feel that stylistically a coach fits what they want to do more. So that we've talked about that a lot in the past, but I just think with Ten Hag is that making those right decisions on the touchline is such an unbalanced ecosystem. It's hard because you just make one tiny mistake, and sometimes it isn't even a mistake. You lose a game, and then it gets highlighted, and it's a problem. You win the game at Villa Park, shouldn't really be a problem. No one should be upset about that. But I still don't think the performance was fantastic. And what can you do about that? And what can you really do when you lose Luke Shaw at half time? So losing Luke Shaw now, one player shouldn't be important, but he is, isn't it? We need Luke Shaw back and fit and healthy.
It's worth a conversation though about Shaw. Like, we're talking about him like he's going to be out for ages, but he did say it was precautionary. So we haven't heard anything yet about how precautionary or how serious it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the hope is that he's back for Sunday, but when you say precautionary, does that mean, it was a precaution, he's going to be out for 2 weeks, but also like the precaution was if we'd have kept him on, he'd be out for 4 months? Yeah. It's
Completely.
It was the right call in that time, and he pointed to Luke Shaw's injury record previously about needing to do it before it got too serious. But there is a wider conversation to have here, and this comes down to squad building. And I look at that back four. I know he's brought Onana in. Malacia has been out injured, obviously, and then you got Martinez. But then that back four was there before he got here. And how many of them actually... Dalot, I think... I know you're usually hypercritical of Dalot, but I think he's winning some people over. Luke Shaw is there as well, but if you're that reliant on him to be able to play a system, you need a backup who can compete with him and even take his place, I think. Because if you get to a point where Luke Shaw is the first choice and then he drops down 3 weeks into the season, he's out for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, you need strength in depth here. And I pointed to it at the start of the show. If you've only got one ball playing centre back, I think United need 2 centre backs this summer. I don't know if they will, but I think they do. Who can play the ball, both sides.
And this is why we criticise the overall recruitment at Manchester United, because I think the thing is there, you're talking about Luke Shaw. It's not actually Luke Shaw, the human being. It's about the position. So if you want your left back to do
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z, then the players you bring in have to almost replicate what that player does. Now, do I think that Tyrell Malacia would be able to replicate what Luke Shaw does on that left-hand side? Well, the answer to that is no. So even though he's a proper left back, he's probably not going to help you that much more than Victor Lindelof in many ways. Victor Lindelof is a centre-back playing in a wider area. The funny thing with Lindelof is that when he has played before, going back over years, he's played at right back more. So you could see how terrified he looked at left back at Villa Park, but he's coming there to help the team. So this is when we go.
Did you find it weird he didn't move Dallo out there and put Lindelof on the right? But I think there was part of it was, Dallo's getting a decent run here. I'll keep him in that position.
Well, we talk about Dallo having decent run, right? I've heard this. Like, he's had 2 or 3 decent games. He's not elevated to like a level where I think, oh wow, he's changed or something's changed. I would have done that.
I
I'd have
agree.
definitely played him left back.
There was a moment where he shanked the clearance, which fell to an Aston Villa player, and he just trickled it at Onana. But if that gone in,
I remember that. That was
the
bad.
conversation's completely different.
Exactly. That goes in the net. Then we're talking about how terrible Dalot is. I think that is a natural change, Scott, in this system at 4-1-4-1, is that to put Lindelof at right back and Dalot at left back. Now, the manager chose not to do that. That's fine. You won the games. Nothing really to talk about. But I do look at those little decisions and micro decisions in games. They are tactical decisions. And I think Lindelof at left back doesn't work for me at all. And I don't think it should work for anyone. I think he just was trying to patch a hole. At least Dalot on the left has got those properties to go forward and to help the forwards on that side. We saw it with the goal, didn't we, on the right hand side, is that he can swing the ball in with his right foot. So I think that's why the manager keeps him that side.
Well, yeah, Lindelof couldn't have done that from the right,
because he's right foot, and Lindelof doesn't do that. So the manager is justified in that micro decision because it helps you win the game. I just think if you're setting up at Luton Town and the way Luton play, and if Luton look at that, they will expose those weaknesses. But then again, it's like, what is your choice? What do you want to do? Is there a way of tightening up your system to make sure that you don't leave these holes? My big concern, Scott, going forward in the next few weeks is the number 6. I think with Casemiro can do you good stuff in there, but his lack of mobility exposes everything.
Hey, we've been saying that since week 1.
Exactly. So the manager's choice will be: do I play 4-1-4-1 with this Brazilian who's got all these medals and it definitely can give you big spells in games where he helps you, there's no doubt about it. But every team is going to be sat there with their iPads and their tactics sheets and their laptops, and they're going to be looking at it, and they're going to be putting a big marker and circle around the number 6, and they are going to be trying to exploit that every single week, and you've got to negate that somehow. So I think the only thing you can do is getting Cobby a little bit deeper to look after that. And I think Cobby does do that. Like, he's more box to box, isn't he? Like, he'll come and defend, and he definitely is getting up the pitch, which I'm really happy to see. I don't know about you. Really happy to see kind of Cobby in those advanced areas. The goal, as I said, comes from Cobby in the corner. He's getting the ball, he keeps the ball, he lays it off. And I think that Manu can give you so much going forward as well as defensively. I don't think he's just a natural number 6. But now the manager, I think if you don't have Luke Shaw, you're going to have to find ways to stop teams hurting you, because it won't be good enough when we get to the end of the season, Scott, and we come 6th. They become 6th and Champions League is 5th, and we go, it was because of injuries, or it was because of this or that or the other, or recruitment. The managers still get judged by it by Jim Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe will look at it and say, right, do we go into next year and invest 1, 2, 3, 400 million in this squad in this window? And has this manager shown me enough? Fingers crossed Ten Hag gets what he needs out of this. I think if he does get Champions League, he'll get another crack at it another year. And you're right, there isn't a lot of managers out there that you just go, yeah, that's the perfect choice. Like,
Xabi Alonso's the in name, but he's Liverpool's, isn't he?
I think he's Liverpool's, but I also like it. It will be interesting to see what FSG do at Liverpool, because even though Xabi Alonso is a kind of obvious choice, they might not go that route. They really might not. They might, ownerships do make bad decisions sometimes. I do think United, if they were looking at a manager, Alonso's on the list, definitely on the list. So we don't know if Ineos are doing that canvassing already, talking to people behind the scenes, going, would you like to manage our football club that we've just gone and purchased? So I like Xabi Alonso. He's flavour of the month, but I think he's kind of a progressive coach that could go in and do a job over a number of years.
Well, that's the thing, and I come back to this point every time. So was Eric Ten Hag when United hired him.
Absolutely.
So you
He's not a lot
just need
different
to
in
remember that.
profile.
You just need to. People need to remember that Eric Ten Hag was hired because of that, and Xabi Alonso's had barely 70 games as a manager. I know he's doing well, but things take time, and I think with Ten Hag, for me, I think there's lots of square pegs and round holes that he's using at the minute, and I don't think we'll be able to see exactly what he wants to do until those players are replaced. But anyway, in terms of players being replaced, maybe we'll see something different this summer in the sense of Sir Jim Ratcliffe is soon to be ratified as 25%. His ownership is soon to be ratified, or his part ownership soon to be ratified by the Premier League and the FA. You'd expect there's an SEC filing which was released on Monday night UK time. Been floating around a bit, and there was an excerpt from it which I will read. As of February 12th, 2024, James A. Ratcliffe's liquid assets, primarily consisting of cash and readily marketable securities, were in excess of $4 billion. James A. Ratcliffe's net worth is significantly in excess of those liquid assets. That's been floating around. There's other parts to this as well, but I think we just wanted to bring up. I transitioned to it because obviously there's a lot of talk about the stadium. There's a lot of talk about actual investment. I know United are on the lines of PSR, and they will need to sell players. But could we see something? Could we actually see a new team come in and actually be able to clean up? I don't want to call it the mess, but clean up and do the things that the manager wants to do in the transfer market in terms of replacing players with, or selling players better, buying new players fit to a system for better fees. And obviously the stadium comes alongside that as well. It's going to be a long process, but yeah. Would you want to pick out of that?
My opinion on that was, when you link it also to recruitment and buying players, is that you can always get it right. It's a choice at the end of the day. When you buy players, you have to decide why you're buying them. And I think with Man United, again, the whole myth of these is twofold, Scott. One myth that Man United don't spend any money on footballers. Well, they have. That's the truth. They've bought a lot of footballers over a long period of time. I think the thing with Eric Ten Hag, and being specific about the manager, is that he's actually had his way in the last year or two in the transfer market before Ratcliffe came along. And a lot of the signings were his types of signings. He was saying, I want Malacia at fullback. I want Martinez. I want Anthony. So he's bought players. He was very high on Mason Mount, wasn't he? He was like, I want Mason Mount. They went and got him. So he has had a part of it. I do think that your strategy for your football club needs to be wider and run from the boardroom. So we will definitely be talking about the sports side and sporting director very, very soon about it. That's all there on the table to kind of come to fruition. But I think the other part of this here, Scott, is this real confusion with United fans, is that what Jim Ratcliffe has bought. Jim Ratcliffe has bought the football team, not the football club. He's going to be putting his money into the football team. And guess what, guys? He's got the money. So this is the whole thing, is that I actually think that when you look at these SEC filings, is that really what they tell us and what Man United believe is that Ratcliffe's actually got the money and proved it, and that before that, Qatar didn't prove it. They asked for it. Qatar didn't give that, but that's an old conversation. We know Qatar as a country is very rich, but whatever was put on the table wasn't what the Glazers were happy with, what was it? So I think Ratcliffe can basically do what he wants, Scott, in the transfer market. He'll be able to pump money into the football club, and part of that will come through the whole spiel with Old Trafford now about what is the vision for Old Trafford, what kind of revenues can you make, just to put a bow on that. People don't realize that, again, like things like food at stadiums make teams incredible amounts of money. For Tottenham Hotspur, they make nearly £1 million a game.
They've got beer that fills up from the bottom.
Well, there you go. Beer that fills up from the bottom, Scott, sold. But the whole thing is that they get between 800,000 a game up to £1 million just on selling food and drink. Man United make pretty much zilch because all they do is sell a pie. So, like, this is why you change that your existence, your reality with a football stadium, and you look more than just a football pitch, or you look more than just a seat, because all of it comes into buying players eventually somewhere down the line about revenues. And Man United have to do that. And I think Ratcliffe has identified that. I think that's why they're going down this path, because he will put his money in, but he will also want Man United to put our money in to an extent. So you have to optimize that with the stadium. I think it's all good, Scott. I'm happy with what I've seen from Ineos so far about how they're trying to conduct themselves behind the scenes. You know, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, we're not Jim Ratcliffe fans. We're not Ineos fans. We're not their stooges. We're not here to do their work. We're Man United fans. We're journalists. We want to see balance. And I don't think we're seeing that so far. We just have to hope that it continues, because the next transfer window will be really interesting, because what happens? How do you do it? And I think it'll be run by a sporting director that says, right, we need to target these positions. We need 2 in every position, and we're going to build that. And it might mean the players worth 2 million or 10 million. There's these players in the youth team are going to get more minutes. And yeah, Eric Ten Hag might not get absolutely everything he wants, Scott, but it's about balance and about giving him tools. You used that word earlier on, you know, and he needs the tools to be able to do the job. And it's totally true that this squad is not equipped to do absolutely everything that Eric Ten Hag wants it to do.
Well, what he has done, and we'll wrap up in a second, what he has done is Harry Maguire, man of the match the other day. Scott McTominay, match winner the other day. 2 players that, as I mentioned earlier, United tried to sell last summer. And what do you do with them? Well, maybe you can credit the players here, but maybe you have to credit the manager as well for forcing them to bring out the best in themselves. What United have made them into is now players who are established impact players in the Premier League, and probably more appealing to other clubs, maybe more so than they were a year ago.
Completely, and this is why I often talk about building markets for players. You know, that's why you play them, but at the same time you're trying to win games, aren't you? So we get to the summer transfer window. If you are going to buy a centre back, you are going to buy a midfielder. Let's assume you are, because I think you've got to. Like, you've got really got a lot of choice. You've got to go and find someone. Then you either use Maguire in those deals and use McTominay in those deals, or you at least try and get them to a football club where they're happy, because that's the other side of it, is that, you know, they can't just do what you want them to do if they're not happy about it. There was always a lot of criticism of Harry Maguire about, why did you not leave the football club, because you weren't getting minutes and that's your fault. And I tried to explain at the time that Man United didn't play his contract up. So what are you going to do? You're going to sit there and take your money. But I think Maguire has shown that he's not the worst footballer in the world, that he's not the worst centre-back in the world, that he can do some things. And I actually think, Scott, that the manager has learned to use him a little bit better this year. Like, he hasn't exposed him. Last year, when Maguire was in the team very briefly, I think that we were playing systems and playing styles at the time that really hurt Maguire. So Maguire was getting run and looking like an idiot. So the manager, I think, has worked that out a little bit with Maguire and built something for him and said, right, I want you to be my centre-back, but I want you to be aggressive going forward into the space. I want you to ball carry when you can, but I want you to look after what's behind you. I think Maguire's done that loads better, so much better than he had done in, say, the previous year or two, where I think he was getting skinned so often. But it must be hard for Maguire, Scott, to start games now with Casemiro in front of him. That will be difficult, because they're both slow, and it means that opposition teams will look at that and say, right, we'll just stick someone in the middle there and we'll hurt them on with the pace that we've got. And fingers crossed we don't get exposed in those moments. But I'm really happy with Maguire. Like, I can't say it enough. I think his performances have stunned me this year. He's really shown that he can still do it, and he will definitely get a new football club next year. And I would not be surprised if we get to the end of the season and people are going, does Maguire get a new contract? Like, funnier things have happened in football, but he's earning it the right way, isn't he? And you can't knock him for that. You really can't.
Let us know in the comments what you think of Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay. The most important thing is United did win. Obviously, lots to unpack from that, but they're back in the mix, back in the hunt. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple and Spotify, and watch us on YouTube. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so you never miss a show, and follow us on social media at @double_Scott Saunders, at @Rob_B, and at TPLMUFC. Until later this week, we'll look ahead to the Luton game. Anything that happens between now and the next time we record, we'll also discuss as well. Thanks for listening, everyone. This has been another Promised Land podcast episode. Until next time, be well, have a great week. See you soon.